Well, listen, everybody, thank you for coming. One of the reasons I wanted to make this announcement here is because this tax short circuit idea, which I'm about to detail, will impact and influence and improve the lives of people all throughout the state and actually the United States, but definitely in the city of Bridgeport. So here's what we're proposing. My first bill that I will propose in the United States Congress is a personal income tax short circuit mechanism whereby if a person, a donor, a taxpayer, whether it's company or person, donates $1,000 or $1 million or $1, they're going to get a 200% credit or tax deduction off of their federal income tax. Now, what does that do? The central thesis of my entire campaign is better resource management. We send down almost the most down to federal government. We get almost the least back in terms of rate of return, and we're constantly finding ourselves coming up broken on schools and hospitals and local roads and all kinds of environmental programs that we should be funding locally because these are local needs. So, there's a lot of long-term solutions by how to kind of shrink the size and burn rate of the federal government. A lot of people have been trying that for years. We're going to continue to try that. But the immediate way to get it done is just a simple adjustment in the tax code. A simple adjustment in the tax code will ensure that people who give $1,000 to one of 3 in-state and state-managed or third-party fiduciary-managed funds, transportation, education, and urban redevelopment, you give $1,000, you get a $2,000 federal tax deduction, and so that money is redirected just by virtue of a tax return to local needs, to be managed by local folks, to solve local problems. Instead of the wasteful and inefficient federal taxpayer to the federal government to get a grant to come back through the state government with conditions and you get 50, 60, maybe if you're lucky 70 cents back on your dollar. Because what happens then is we lose control of the funding, we lose control of our authority, and we lose control of the direction of the things we're trying to do. So with a simple tax short circuit concept, we actually enable people to step up and say, you know what, if 100 cents of my dollar is going to go to my local needs, I'm in. So it inspires investment, it inspires charity, it inspires redevelopment of schools, transportation, and urban redevelopment, and it does so with a simple change in the tax code. It's doable. We've tried to do it at the local level and a number of levels of Hartford. It can be done, and a couple of other states have tried the model, but this is a more expansive idea that I'm going to propose. So what does that mean for a city like Bridgeport? Well, if you're down in Black Rock, up the North End, or anywhere in this city, you're getting murdered by property taxes. One of the reasons you're getting murdered by property taxes, and everyone's getting murdered by property taxes, is because we don't manage our resources properly. Again, we give the most, get almost the least, and then wonder why everything's broke or broken. Well, if we actually have a way to keep local dollars local, that takes the burden off the municipal and local governments to have to raise property taxes because they keep coming up short on their grant money from the federal government or what they're getting back from the state. Local dollars for local problems to address local needs. And I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat at the local level managing the funds, because there's no Republican or Democratic way to catch a dog, plow a road, or teach a kid. These are local needs that people on the ground here in our communities need to address, and the funding needs to stay here to do it. So that's going to be the first thing I do in Congress. We can work on the bigger things, like I say, the size and burn rate of the federal government, but a simple change in the tax code, it changes next year right now to the city of Bridgeport and everybody else in the state, and frankly the United States, because it'll work. It can work across the 50 states. That's our proposal. I'm glad everybody came. If anyone has any questions, I'm willing to take them.
How's that affecting Bridgeport school systems?
Well, what I'd hope with the same as the property taxes. If we have more money in the pot, a local in-state controlled pot for education, the state and or the third-party fiduciary has an additional resources to fund Bridgeport schools, to fund other schools. I mean, what was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a court decision just came down and said the way the state of Connecticut is funding its schools is unconstitutional and wrong. Unconstitutional under the state constitution, which guarantees a fair and free education. So instead of trying to beg back for our own pennies from the federal government, which I've watched us do in Hartford for years, we changed the way we test and teach and do everything else to try and get back some of our own money. Let's keep all of our own money and do it the way we want. This gives an additional pot of resources that we otherwise haven't had. We've had to beg for some of it back from Uncle Sam. That shouldn't happen anymore.